Welcome back to Daily Power Boost. Today on Beyond the Boost, I'm happy to announce that my guest today has lived inside the question this show keeps asking, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. Karen Taylor spent over 2 decades in corporate. She was good at it, really good. No friction, no ceiling, just a version of herself that kept showing up and kept getting recognized. And then her world broke open in a way that didn't allow her to go back to who she had been. What followed wasn't a glow up story, it was years of searching, shedding, and slowly discovering that the identity she had built wasn't actually who she was. It was what she had learned to do really well. Today, she helps women find their way back to the self that was underneath it all. Karen, welcome to Beyond the Boost.
Thanks, Sean. So happy to be here and have this conversation with you.
Excellent. I'm going to ask you some things that are intentionally, you're probably not prepared to answer. That's the point of my show because I feel that unprepared answer, it's usually the truth. So, to open us up, before your sister died, describe the version of you that was running the show. Not the job title, but who you were as a self concept. And what did that version of you believe about how life worked and what was valuable? What made you valuable?
I would say very performative. Um, in the corporate space, I didn't really play the game. I really was never a game player, but I definitely just felt like I'm going to show up and work really hard and I will earn that recognition. I was a hard worker, kind of installed in me from very young age. I worked at a bank. I was a teller in high school. I worked at a bank in college. So I was always working, and that really was part of my identity, was just I'm a worker. I remember I couldn't wait to graduate college so I could work. So like working was always part of how I identified myself. And again, I didn't play the game, but I just knew that if I just show up and I really like go all in and I contribute, I add value, then that's going to feel good for me. I know I'm going to be contributing to other people too. That was very much part of it. I also was very much seeking validation externally at that time in my life. I had not gone through the journey of going inward, so it was very external, definitely in relationships. There was patterns there that I recognized on I can fix it, right? Like I was the fixer, so I was attracting people that I could fix, and then again, there was that earning. If I can contribute to you and help you get better and fix you, then I've earned my worth. So I think that probably summarizes who I was at that point, really looking for that validation and worth outside myself.
Okay, and then you lost your sister. And in the way you lost her, what stopped making sense? And get as specific as you can here.
Literally everything. I had never experienced loss of that magnitude. I had lost grandparents, aunt and uncles, but to lose my sister, my only sister, and to have her die in a fire at her home, it just like flipped everything upside down. Like everything I thought I understood about life, it just stopped making sense. Like that. And I literally woke up the day after and I just felt like I don't know anything anymore. I always knew that it was a potential. My sister struggled for most of her life with feeling good enough and feeling like she was worthy and finding that happiness from within. And I think probably the biggest thing that stopped making sense is all the advice I would have given her in the past, which was just be happy. Like happiness comes from within. Like you get to choose that. And I recognized that I believed those words, but I had no idea how to actually help somebody achieve that or to help myself achieve that. And so what I think probably stopped making sense is all the surface level advice or all these surface level things that we say, right? That sound really good. But there's not much underneath that until you really go deep and do the work to uncover what that really means for you. And so I think I realized I was living a very shallow, surface level existence. And so when she passed away, like I think that was the greatest recognition was I didn't know how to help her actually be happy and I didn't know how to help myself.
And so, what I know about your story is that led to you doing a lot of work on mindset and how to process the grief, the spiritual work. And in our last conversation, you shared something and it just gave me pause. You said you'd done all this work, but something was still missing. What was the shape of this missing thing? Like,
Yeah,
what did it feel like to still not have the answers in spite of all the work?
really frustrating. It felt really frustrating. And I started to think, am I just not doing this right? I kind of fell into those habits again, like, oh, I must not be doing it right. So I would try to do it better. All of the mindset things, all of the morning routines. I felt like, oh, I have to learn this one thing better. And I was still very much in the mind. And so I had totally discounted the body, like hadn't even considered the body at this point. And when I started to learn about the nervous system, it felt literally like it was a puzzle piece that just connected in and everything started to make sense.
Yeah, it almost seems
And
like that last puzzle piece. You're like, oh, there it is. It was like the
absolutely, like
missing puzzle piece, and until you find it,
100%, 100%. That's exactly what it felt like. And when it connected, like I really almost felt that whole visceral, like wholeness feeling. And, I've questioned, like, why did it take so long for me to get that last piece? Because that's been an ongoing, right? My sister passed away in 2018. And I really just came into this work at the end of last year. And so our mind wants everything to make sense, right? It wants to understand it logically. And then it's like, no, okay, we're not going to do that. Like, we're going to get out of the mind. And it happened the way it happened because that's the way it happened. And, it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame. And so I know once I get a little probably further out, I'll understand the timing a little bit better. Um, Steve Jobs said, so eloquently, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can connect them looking backwards. And so that's always been the case for me. But I think, you have to create a little bit more distance from it to really clearly see why things happen in the order that they did. So I'm excited to get to that point and look back.
well, and I've learned in my own journey that one of two things happens. Either you find the connection in the dots, like why the timing, why it worked out that way, or in some cases, you just learn to be like, it's okay. I don't need the dots. I just realized, okay, it happened when it needed to happen. And now I'm here and I'm moving forward from that point. And
Yeah, I think
I
that I
think we
got
can get
to and
caught up.
for
Yeah, I think we can get caught up in like trying to connect the dots and
For sure. And I think I realized, like, there's no point in that, but I always just find, like, joy in looking back and seeing how it all just came together, but not letting that stop me, but it always just gives me I don't know, I always get a little tickled by it when I see, like, all the pieces that had to happen in the way that they did.
yeah, of course, it's always nice in any of the times that, whether it's my own life or working with someone and you see when things clicked and you're, oh, what just changed? What did you
Yeah.
just realize? All right. And you also described leaving after 23 years in corporate and hitting that wall. You said it clearly last call. This is not who you are. You said that at the end of that. You're like, this isn't who I am. I want to stay here for a moment and tell me, what was the identity that you were rejecting or that was being rejected, and by whom?
I think with identity, I think that I thought that I had to have this structured identity. I was very structured identity in the corporate space, and I had no resistance to that because, again, I grew up in that environment of working for other people and kind of taking that direction from other people and going all in, but not having to really create my own work, so to speak. Um, I was also very much down in the corporate space. When I went in, I thought, oh, I have all these great ideas and I'm very innovative and I want to help really move things forward. And I learned pretty quickly that, at least the environment that I was in, um, the message was that they wanted that, but in reality, not as much. They really did want people to be pretty compliant and agreeable. And so I just learned to kind of blend in and you kind of just show up and do the work. And that worked for a while, but then there was that bigger part of me that's like, that's just not like you have something more to give the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. It almost sounds
Um,
like you were a big fish in an undersized tank.
yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And gosh, there's so many more people that were more qualified than me, but I think I definitely stood out because, again, I'm a very practical person, so I don't know how to play the games. And so I think that was recognized by people that it was like, oh, she just really likes what she does. And she just really she cares, and she just wants to help things improve because my whole background was really in operations and process improvement. And that's really kind of interesting that I'm now doing that, but just on an individual level with people, right? Just really wanting to get in and understand what's going on, that's keeping you in this repetitive pattern. And then, like, how can we break free of that? Because there's a bigger, better version of you that wants to get out into the world. And so it's interesting when you look at what you were doing in the corporate space versus what you're doing now. But what I think I came to realize really just within the last probably 6 months as it relates to identity is my identity is really whatever I'm doing. It's like a snapshot of the actions that I'm taking. And so for the longest time, I will tell people I'm going to start working out, right? Every Monday, I'm going to start this. I have this plan to do all these things. And then I would shut my alarm off and I would not get up. And so I'm like, okay, what's happening here? I've done so much work on myself. Like, why can't I get past this thing? And I realized I didn't believe I was that kind of person because I wasn't taking the action. It's like I wasn't even getting up and driving to the gym, right? I was literally just shutting my alarm off. And so I just didn't believe it. Like, I didn't believe that that's who I was. And so I wasn't taking the actions, right? So nothing got reinforced except that I like to turn my alarm off and stay in bed and be comfortable.
Don't we all?
So,
At
yeah.
some
And so
level?
for sure. Right. And I've had some really good conversations with a girlfriend of mine who she gets up at 4 o'clock, like clockwork, and she's done it for years and years. And it would be odd for her not to do that. Like, her body would feel very strange if she didn't do that. And at the same time, she said, I always want to turn my alarm off and go back to bed. She's like, it's not like at some level, you think it's just all just always going to be easy. And I don't know that that's true when we're doing kind of the uncommon thing. Like, I don't know that. I do think it eventually it becomes more automatic. We have that automatic reaction to it. But at some level, when we're doing hard things, I think we just have to push ourselves and say, like, this is going to be, hard. Like, I want to stay in bed. I want to be comfortable, but I'm not going to do that because it doesn't match who I am now.
Right. Well, and I look at it this way: identity is malleable, right? We can form it, but it's not, I think the easiest way, it's not microwavable, right? We live in this era where we just pop something in the microwave and it's ready like that. We have a question, we can go to AI and ask a question and get an instant answer. But these shifts, they take discipline and effort to install through repetition, like you said,
Yes. Yes.
you know,
Over and over and
and
over again.
the other thing is I've talked about this a lot on recent episodes. The old identity does not go quietly. It likes to try to pull you. See, you are that person who doesn't get up when the alarm goes off. See, and you just said it, and it becomes. You didn't say it in these words, but I see it. It becomes that self-perpetuating loop, right? You say, "Oh, I
Absolutely.
want to be better at getting up and going to the gym and doing da 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 da." Then the alarm hits, and you're like, "I don't want to do this. I want to sleep
Yep.
in." And then you start on the rain on your own parade, like, see, you're not meant to get up. That's just not who you are. And I remember I was reading something similar. I had read like The Miracle Morning, and there was all the talk about the 5 a.m. club. And I'm like, and here's the crazy part, Karen. When I was in the military, I was up at 4:30 every morning, like clockwork. Most of the time, I didn't even need an alarm. I was just
Yeah, I've heard
4:30.
that.
I'm up and running. But I'm in this part of my journey, and I'm like, okay, I'm sleeping until much later. I want to get up earlier and have some personal time that's just me. My wife's still sleeping. My son's still sleeping. I got some time that I can be alone with my thoughts, read something that I want to be able to read uninterrupted, etc. So I set my alarm for 5 o'clock. I'm like, I can do this. I used to do this. Like, I used to be that person. The alarm went off. I went, that's too early. And then strangely, like just from constant thought programming, not even like actually remembering to set the alarm, but like just like, I'm that person. I'm that person. I'm the person. Today I'm up at 5 o'clock. We go on vacation. I'm like, oh, I get to sleep in. Nope, I'm up by 5:30.
It's funny, I got up at 5 o'clock today and it was like 9:30 and I'm like looking at the clock, I'm like, how is it not noon yet? Like, I've gotten so much done. Like, how is it not noon yet? So I do think that I'm going to keep this promise to myself. And that's really what I've gotten to is all those times that I said I was going to do that and I didn't do it. It was more about not keeping the promise to myself. And that was the really difficult thing.
And I think that's the foundation. Like, I am a person. You adopt that instead of adopting an identity of like, I'm an early riser. I get up at 5 a.m. every day and get a ton of work done before 10 a.m. Start with, I'm the kind of person who keeps promises to myself. I think,
And that's what I think this is really all about, right? If we can keep the promises that we make to ourselves, we do what we say we're going to do. Man, does that start to change things for you. And it starts to change how you interact with other people too, because I think it's really hard to trust other people when we really don't trust ourselves. And right, it's always just a projection outward. And so that was a big unlock for me to see that it was, like you said, it was more than just the working out. It was the promise to
right.
myself.
I think you nailed it right there, Karen. I always say this, that trusting ourselves and loving ourselves unconditionally, those two things, they're the foundation everything relies on.
Everything.
Everything. Like, trust yourself, love yourself. It doesn't mean be soft on yourself. It also doesn't mean to punish yourself every time you screw up. It's to acknowledge, like, oh, okay, I didn't keep that promise to myself. Now what am I going to do? I think
Yeah, with grace,
with
right?
grace. Yeah.
Yeah, with grace. And it's just about that rebound, right? It's like this happened. I'm not perfect. That's not what we're striving for here. And so now it's just how can I recalibrate back to center? And I really do believe if you keep your promises and you do like every day just show up in a state like you're being unconditional love, I really think everything else does take care of itself.
Right. It will. Yeah. And I think, my son's very young. So I still remember the early days of him learning to walk. And I think of a baby. When a baby's learning to walk, they take a step, maybe two, and they fall on their face.
It's just doesn't.
Do they lay on the floor and beat themselves up like, God, you can't even walk right? No. What do? They get back up and they do it again.
There's that.
And they fall on their face again and they get back up and they do it again. And I think as adults, we kind of forgot that lesson. Like, it's okay to fall on your face, pick yourself up, reformulate the plan maybe, and step forward again.
Yeah, I love that analogy. So relatable. And I think the other thing that's become really apparent to me is I'm really now starting everything that I do now with this understanding that it might not work. Like, I'm going to go do this thing. And the reality is, it might not work. I don't know, right? Like, we're venturing into the unknown. And I think so much of what keeps us stuck is we want that certainty. We want that certainty that it's going to work out. We want that certainty that if we go all in, that it's going to be enough. And I think it's really helped me being in this space to say, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm going to go try to find out, right? And treat things like an experiment instead of being so rigid and like, it has to be this way or it has to be that way. It's like, no, I'm starting on Substack. I'm like, I'm going to go try this thing with writing and it might not work out. Maybe it will. Like, we're going to go find out. And
Well, and
that's really helped me just take the pressure off and just um, have fun with it, right? Because like I think about like why I left corporate because I knew that there was something bigger in me that wanted to like give to the world, and like that's exciting. And sometimes we lose the fun in this, and so I think treating things like micro experiments for me is just like it's a little joyous, right? It's with we're doing it with wonder, and I think when we're in that state, a lot of really cool things can happen.
right. And you can learn a lot of powerful lessons in the process too. And that reminds me, like when my son was little and we were reading all the parenting books, because we're like, I don't want to screw my kid up. I don't want to make the mistakes my parents made, blah, blah, blah. And I read something that fit right with what you just said. A lot of the things babies are doing, like when they throw their bowl off the high chair tray and you pick it up and put it back and they throw it again. And the parents go, oh, just why just keep throwing it? They're just doing little micro experiments. They threw
Say,
the ball.
will he pick
Oh,
it up
what'll
again?
happen? And then it's like throw it again. Will the same thing happen? Like they're exploring, they're learning their world. They're like, if I do the same thing, will the same result happen? And if we can change who we are to approach it as a micro experiment, like I'll try it. If it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to die unless you're doing something really crazy,
Right? Sometimes then maybe,
but
right?
generally we're doing little experiments.
Most
We're
part.
not like getting on a podcast without a website or anything behind it. You're like, okay, I'm going to do it. Who knows? What we'll see. Right? It's like the old song I heard when I was a kid. Que sera, sera. What will be, will be.
Yeah, it just takes the pressure off. And there's so much pressure anyway when we're doing this work, right? So I mean it feels lighter. And
Right.
I think anytime that we can go into something feeling lighter, it has a much better chance of actually working the way that we want it to anyway.
Right. And life is for living. Life is about enjoying the journey. And sometimes that journey is going to be down the wrong path. and that's okay.
Yeah.
You might discover something on that wrong path that you never would have seen otherwise. So, talking about that, when you left corporate, who would you say you were trying to become? And what were you able to discover about why that version wasn't available yet?
Know that I knew that answer, to be honest with you. I think I was just following like all of the guidance from all the people that I would see that looked to have the success that I wanted. I got very caught up in the learning, very caught up in the learning. And I'm a learner, so I mean, that fits, but it also became the crutch of not taking the action. Because, gosh, like every time you open, your phone, it's like there's another person who like has the answer. And you're like,
The
man, I thought I
magic
had the
course.
answer.
It's going to change your
There's
whole
the answer
life.
right here. Yes. And so I think I was trying to get it right. I think I was trying, if I'd taken all the information, like from all these people that are really smart and successful, then I have the best chance to like get it right. And like we just talked about, it's gripping so tightly to it. And I don't know that I had an idea of what the identity was other than, somebody who was, making money and like helping and making an impact. But I wasn't. I wasn't because I wasn't putting myself out there. I was, people I talked to were like, oh my gosh, like everybody needs what you have. Like, you have so much like amazing things to offer. But I wasn't showing myself to the people who really needed that in the world. And so there was this incoherent, like my heart knew what I wanted. Intellectually, I knew what I wanted, but my body wasn't on board. I wasn't taking the actions. And that, to get to that identity level, I now understand like you have to take action. Like you can't, like that's part of the equation. And for a long time, I guess it did fall into from a spiritual sense, because, I went down this really very deep spiritual path and awakening that somehow it would just magically all come together. Like that I really didn't have to do much. Like if I just stayed in this state, that everything would happen. And maybe that does happen to people. I don't know. That wasn't my experience. And so I did finally understand like that missing piece again was the body and taking the action. And now I take inspired action because I know how to really tune into my intuition and hear and listen for the right nudge. And I'm very in tune with my values. And so I believe that when I make decisions now, it's very aligned. But yeah, you have to take action.
Well, I kind of think of a saying, it's kind of cliche to a point, and you had talked about all the things that you would have said in the past, like to your sister, and how looking from beyond that, you're like, I was going to share this stuff and I haven't even followed it. It wasn't working for me. So, but we tend to do that, right? We tend to just like, oh, I heard this. I hear people all the time that God won't give you more than you can handle. I'm like, what verse is that? Like, because it's not there, not the Bible I read. But people repeat it over and over and over. And I think that's part of humanity. But what I heard is don't try to make the right decision, learn to make decisions right.
Yeah,
Right.
that
Because as
part.
you said, it's very easy to get caught up in the learn loop. Trust me, I know through one of the clients I worked with who, as we were digging into identity and what identity she was operating from, she came across something called 2E, which is called twice exceptional. And it's within the neurodivergence realm, but 2E, it's twice exceptional. So on one side, it's the person who's the constant learner. They thrive on learning and fast learning. Like taking 3 courses at once and, you know, maybe have a touch of ADHD or something similar. So that's why they call them twice exceptional. It's not wrong, it's just different wiring. My son was asking about this and I was explaining to him. I said it's just different wiring. It's like these two devices. They both do similar jobs, but this one runs iOS and this one runs Android. It's just different operating system. But as I was working with this client, I'm like, I think that's me because I thrive on learning. When I went to school, like I was like, my wife used to say, if Sean could find a job where he got paid to learn all the time, it's his dream job. Like that would be the perfect job
Same.
for him.
Same.
And I get distracted very easily. But as we know, even though we're distracted with this, there's certain things we can lock into for anybody, and the world just melts away. Everything else melts away. Time, family, whatever. You're so focused on this thing, you're just like lost. So it's not a lack of focus, it's just very targeted focus. And that really illuminated a lot, both for my own experience, for the client, and for my son. When I was reading him the description, he's like, that's me. Because he is very smart at reading, he's very advanced in reading and math, but the tag on his underwear can drive him nuts.
So
All of that to say, again, going back to identity is malleable. What identity do we want to have? And you nailed, like, I'm a firm believer, getting clear on your values, loving yourself, trusting yourself, knowing your values, non-negotiables, like these are my values. No matter what, I cannot violate those. That's the beginning of forming the identity we want to achieve, right?
yeah. And it makes decisions easier. When you have a decision to make and you bump it up against your values, for me, it just became like pretty clear. I mean, there were, some things where you're like, well, yeah,
Maybe.
maybe it doesn't align exactly, but it still feels right. So, but it just became more clear cut to me. I don't struggle very much with decision making.
Right. Well, and I've had it like I have, for example, Thursday afternoon. It's a protected time. Doesn't matter what opportunity is presented. My first answer is I'm not available because it's a set container. It's like the first response is always no, because like you said, it fits my values, which is family, and I'm living my values. So that's the other thing, right? Values are not just something we put on our wall or
So,
write in a journal somewhere.
yeah, you really have to be living and experiencing it every day. Absolutely.
All right. So another thing you said to me was reconnecting isn't about building something new. It's about remembering what was always there. When you realize that, what was it? What did you find when you peeled back the layer?
I think I talked a lot about, especially in relationships, looking for this external validation. And if somebody else can give me this thing, then I'll feel this way about myself. And after having some very difficult relationships back to back, I started to really kind of unwind all of that and see also what I was getting from it, right? Because, we really don't do things unless at some level our subconscious is getting something from it, right? There's a
Mm-hmm.
payoff in there. And so I had to find the payoff and say, okay, is there a way to still protect this value of mine, but do it in a better way? Like, can I upgrade the job role that I'd given
Right. Still
right?
meet the need, but in a more
In better way.
positive, a more
Right.
a way that serves me, not causes
Works against me.
strife. Yeah, works against you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because our resistance is there to show us something, right? It's showing up to say, I'm protecting this thing that you told me was really important to you, but now I see you're going in this other direction and I want to help you get you there, but still working on these outdated operating instructions. And
Mm-hmm.
so it shows up so that we can incorporate it and integrate it. I'm a firm believer, and I'm sure you are too, like, we're not here to like disown parts of ourselves. And I think for a very long time, that's what I did. I pushed down or I just tried to wall off the parts of me that I didn't think were acceptable to
Right.
other
We
people.
annex those parts, right?
Yeah, just exile them. And again, that's very much self-abandonment. And I had abandonment issues. My dad, left when I was in third grade. My parents got divorced. He moved to Florida, started a new family. And so I already had like these abandonment wounds. And I just continued to do that over and over again by not integrating
Right.
all the
Did it
parts
to
of myself.
yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
To these parts
100%.
of you.
Yeah. And so that was a big part of my coming into remembering and not becoming somebody new, but remembering who I always was, which was, unconditional love, worthy. We come into this world that way and then we learn all these things and we take on these beliefs or put on these masks that make us think differently. And at the end of the day, none of that is the truth. The truth of who we are is sovereign and is like we've talked about, just pure unconditional love. And when you finally bring all parts of yourself back in, that's when you feel whole. And it's not to say like, there's parts of me, I used to go from like 0 to Tasmanian devil in like 1 second when I was triggered by certain things. And so that serves me really well, right? When I need to get something done, man, I can go. Like I can get after it and I can get all that, energy going. But I have to temper that because I don't want that to show up and be negative, especially in relationships when I'm triggered. I don't want to just like snap off at somebody. So all the parts of ourselves serve. We just have to kind of finesse them and figure out like, when's the right time to bring this part out? And maybe this part needs to just chill out for a little.
Well, and sometimes it's like you said, that part of us, Jung calls it the shadow, right? The shadow self. They're parts that we've exiled, at least temporarily, because like I'm ugly when that version of me comes out and I don't like it.
Yep.
So I'm just going to put it away. But you said, but that can serve you in a positive way when you need, I call it pit bull mindset,
Yep.
right? Um, I started on my journey as a coach over probably almost 9 years ago and was all lit up and like fired up. And I did a lot of work, that inner work on myself, and still had that old identity like, who's going to listen to you? What do you got to say? You're not that smart, all that malformed beliefs that we created when we didn't have the capacity to understand what was happening. Like you said, when your father left and your parents divorced, you developed certain beliefs around there. I had abandonment issues, a father that was in the house, but only in body. Like his body was in the house, but that was it. And, going back and working through that and undoing those old versions of me that said, I have to earn my worth. I have to produce to be valued or to have worth. And it's all BS, right? It's all just belief systems, which is modifiable. But again, you can't just flip a switch. But I think with the shadow parts, it's about reevaluating and reassigning. If you've got this ugly version of yourself that you said trigger, which I learned from one of my mentors, nobody triggers me. I trigger myself based on what's happening out there. What that person did, what this person said, I trigger myself on it. And the pit bull mindset, that determination, that go all out for a sprint to get the job done, can serve in a positive way. So it's about reassigning, reframing the roles of those parts of us, or using them as indicators. One of the clients I was working with had two parts. One was head down, do the work, and the other one's like, I just want to be lazy and party and have fun. And there was a war going on,
Yeah. It's like a tug of war. Absolutely.
an internal tug of war. And it's like, what if the party version of you is trying to tell you you're working too hard, take a rest,
Absolutely it was.
right? Like, go just spend 24 hours having fun and don't worry
Yeah,
about the
again, like
rest.
this work is supposed to be fun. Like it's hard. I mean, no doubt about it. Like being an entrepreneur, being a solopreneur, most challenging thing I've ever taken on. But it's also supposed to be fun. Like we're not just supposed to be like, you know, in drive and
Automatons.
push and yeah, like and right, I tend to like when I get in that mode anyway, like I tend to want to shut out the world. And I had to be really aware of that and say, no, you know what? Like today, all I'm doing is just chilling and I'm going to just go with the flow and whatever anybody wants to do. And just whatever, like, no plans, like just go with it. And I don't need a lot of that, but I always come back from that just feeling so like alive and refreshed. And that's important. It's important. It's because, we are responsible, right? Like when you're doing this work, like it's all on your shoulder. Like the successes, the failures, everything is on you. And so that can result in like, well, I just have to heads down, work harder, but we all need that time.
Yeah. Right. So somebody listening to this right now has probably done the real work. They've seen growth, shed some of that old beliefs, etc. They're still not feeling like they've arrived. What would you say is something that they're most likely still carrying that they already think they put it down?
I would say I would have that conversation with yourself and really get honest about, do you really want it? We have to really want the thing, right? And I think when you beyond just like the surface level why, like get really down deep into why you want it. Because when it's hard and it's gonna be hard a lot of times, you're gonna wanna say like, I just need to go learn one more thing now, right? Like I prepared for this launch and the launch didn't go the way I wanted it to. So therefore, like I have to retreat and go back to whatever, my strategy is for
I
relief.
have to go get a real job.
I had to go get a real job. Like I did that. I oscillated in that space for so long. And I would say if you really want it, and most of us do, right? And if you're really like in tune with why, and again, the deep why, push, like keep, you know what I mean? Like know that it's going to be difficult, know that things aren't going to work. Allow yourself to feel it and then just take the next action anyway. Like it just really is that. Like you just have to keep going because it's so easy for our bodies want us to retreat because that's default mode. Default mode is survival and protection. And so we know that. And so we just have to push. And I'm not saying like the, hustle and grind. Like I'm not into all that, but I am saying we can do hard things. Like we have more in us than we're usually like allowing ourselves to even believe. And so I would say just know that that's going to happen. Allow the feeling to come up and then just kind of push yourself a little bit, right? Just push yourself a little bit and take that next action anyway. And you're going to realize one, you kept the promise to yourself, but two, you're like, wow, all of a sudden, a month down the road, this new big thing opened up. And guess what wouldn't have happened if you would have retreated back and just kind of went back into production mode.
And you know what's
So
floating in
that's
my head is before we hit the record button, when you realized that I live in Guatemala and you were sharing the story about your son who just came back from Guatemala,
what
tell us what he did in a short. Because
he
I
did.
think it, yeah, because I think it fits what you just said. Like, we can do
Uh,
hard things, right?
yeah. 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 So my son, he came home like, I don't know, just a few weeks ago. And he had this big backpack. And I'm like, what's up with the backpack? And it was like, a big hiking backpack. He's like, oh, I booked a solo trip to Guatemala. And I'm like, really? Where did this come from? He was just finishing his last class that he was taking. He's like, something, he's wanted to do. And he did it. I'm like, okay. And he figured it all out. Like, he's never done a solo trip, right? He's 25. So this is kind of new. Knew what medications to take for altitude and all the things. He sorted everything out. And stayed at a hostel the first night he was there. Of course, the movie is like playing in my mind. And it was Mother's Day weekend. So I'm like, what are you doing to me? But he hiked this mountain and it was not an easy. I mean, I think when I looked it up, it said, 8 of 10 or 9 of 10 from a strenuous difficulty standpoint. And he wasn't like used to doing this, but he said, that first, I think 10 minutes, and it's like steep. He said it was just like a battle with his mind. Can I do this? I'm going to do this. No, you can't, right? Like it was just that constant battle and he pushed through it and he did it. And what was really cool is he came back and, his body was tore up, right? Like, I mean, he had to recover, but now he's doing a juice cleanse and that's not something he's ever done. And so, we do these things and we push ourselves and it opens our mind to what's possible because the truth is there's so much that we haven't even begun to explore. And all it takes is that possibility opening up that, hey, this could work for me. That's why staying curious is so important. Because then the energy field like lets it in. Otherwise, it just keeps it out because we can only hold so much. So I think keeping your mind open to what's possible and then just pushing yourself and showing yourself what you're really made of, which is like infinite capability.
Yes. And I can verify what Karen's son told about that beginning of the hike because in my second year living in Guatemala, we hiked one of the volcanoes, a sleeping volcano. The one her son, I think, hiked. You hike a sleeping volcano, but you get to watch a live volcano, which is pretty awesome. They are very intense. The first, and sounds like he was well prepared, like probably good shoes, a backpack.
Yeah.
We weren't. I was just my regular street tennis shoes, and you're hiking down this trail, and the ground it's volcanic soil, so it's not hard packed, so your feet are slipping.
Yeah.
And I remember my wife, we'd been hiking for 4 or 5 hours. And my wife's like, to our guide, she's like, are we there yet? Like, I'm going to. And there's a little rock like 2 feet from her that says, falta poco, which means you're almost there. And our friends who were the guides, they're like, right there. She's like, I don't believe it. But we did it. It is very intense, but it illustrates, and we were in our 40s to do this. I think the key message there is the only limit we have is buried in the 6 inches between our ears.
It's true. I mean, certainly there's some physical things that I can't go do, but like by and large, It really is. If you're just committed enough and you're just putting in the reps and you go for it, or you just like continue to do the thing over and over again, you can have really what you want. It takes commitment. It takes commitment and it takes discipline.
Well, and with the illustration of the volcano hike, we stopped at least 4 times on our way up. And in life, I think when you're facing a hard challenge, it's okay to stop, catch your breath, survey the situation, and then move forward. Not look back at like, I'm just going to go back down, but keep looking ahead and like, okay, I'm going to take a break and drink a cold Coca-Cola or something and stand back up and continue on. All right. So, my final question, Karen, if your sister could see you, who you are right now, not what you're building, who you are, what do you think she would say?
You're gonna get me emotional. She would say, "Yeah, it was always the you always had it in you." And she'd probably say it took you long enough to like listen to the clues and then the signs I was sending you. She was my biggest cheerleader. She always saw something in me from a very young age. And so I think that's what she would say. She would say, "Yeah, you always had it."
Yeah, something like, you always had it. I'm just glad you finally see it.
Yeah. And like, go do the big things. Like, you got it. Like, the world needs all of us to show up, right? Like, so many of us are talking about similar things, but we all show up differently because we've all had such different experiences. Like, I bring a lot of, grief work into what I do because that's just my lived experience. And I got certified as a grief educator because I wanted to understand it better. And so that does come into my work. And so we all have a different way of doing it. But at the end of the day, a lot of what we're all doing is very similar because there is like some very common things that, you really like we talked about, right? Like
Well,
self
and
trust.
I think there's core truths is the way I see it. And as you
Yeah.
said, you bring in this grief training. I bring in decades of lived experience that where I made the wrong choice and had to pay the price or didn't process. I kept exiling parts or
Yep.
bringing those parts and playing with them for a while and going, okay, that isn't working either. Kind of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing. And I went to theology and psychology training and NLP and strategic intervention, family therapy, strategic therapy. So, yes, we all bring different, like I'm reading a story to my son that we're kind of creating as we go based on a book that I wrote for him called The Headspace Cinema, which is to teach kids that the mind is the energy of life that brings it. Our thought is the film, but it's just the film. And then our consciousness is what makes those thoughts feel real. There's an old
Yeah.
saying, false evidence appearing real. I don't necessarily agree with that anymore because for that person in the middle of that fear, it's 100% real.
Yeah. Agreed.
And in his stories, he has these lenses. And the key lens is the lens of the observer. And when he takes that lens out, he gets to look through it and see things as they really are, not our interpretation of them in that moment based on the thoughts that are flying around
Yeah.
or our
Yeah.
state. how I woke up late and the kids didn't do their homework and whatever.
Yeah, there's always going to be things, right, that can throw us off. And so we have choice in how we show up. And I think that's like, again, when you find that center for you, then you kind of know when you're getting off of it. And so it's just kind of always that recalibration. The external world's going to continue doing its thing. And all we have control over is, can we remain stable and, in that internal state of unconditional love, regardless of what's happening outside of ourselves. But yeah, I would just say if you feel like you have it in you, you do, or else you wouldn't be feeling it, right?
Right.
You wouldn't be. So bring it to the world. The world needs you in your unique way that you can help. It needs all of us to show up that way. And once you do that and you reach that coherence where your mind and your heart and your body are all like in sync, like that to me is heaven on earth. Like that to me is like that's what we came here for. So
And to wrap up, I just want to say what I'm taking from this is that loss not only took your sister, it took away an unsustainable identity. And the work wasn't about building something new. It was about finding the someone that you needed to be was just covered up. And it was the real version of you all along.
absolutely.
All right, everybody that's listening, thank you for listening. Karen, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate your time and you sharing your story with us. And looking forward to seeing the website and whatever else comes out of this work that you've been working on and reaching out and touching more lives. I think the theme is what you need to be, it's already in you. So go share it with the world. It's like you have a light, you have a purpose. So let it shine.
Yeah.
All right.
Beautifully said.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
Sean. I really love the conversation.
All right. And everybody have a great rest of your week because these usually go out on Tuesday. And we'll catch you on the next one. Or be sure to stop in to Daily Power Boost for the daily bites. Take care. God bless. We spend a lot of time on this show talking about the threshold, the space between the identity that got you here and the one required for the new ground. You're listening to this because something in your current architecture is fracturing. You're running the performer playbook or the striver protocol, and it's costing you an immense amount of energy to maintain the facade. The external results are there, but the internal friction, it's burning you out. Most people will let this episode end and go right back into the performance. They'll put the mask back on for their next Zoom meeting and keep relying on the identity that's actively caging them. I'm looking for the leader who's done performing. If you're ready to look at the structural identity collapse happening beneath the surface, we need to map your architecture. Go to the link in the show notes, book your identity clarity call. We'll identify the exact survival identity running your calendar and begin the shift into conscious leadership. Stop performing, start becoming.